Justice League issue 28. James Tynion the fourth, writing with Javier Fernandez and Daniel Samper on the art. So Jean and Kendra are off to see Lex. She thinks it's a bad idea. Lex has tech to basically act as telepathy to contact Jean, and says, knock her out or I'm not going to speak to you and you'll never find me ever. And so he knocks her out with his abilities, and he's like, secret doorway, bitch. And
and then he has these little spider bots that carry her.
Yeah. Here's my secret out of sync with reality base that's fancy and hidden.
That's so Lex.
It's very Lex. Yep. And he wants Jean to join him and accept that Doom's the way forward. And or even more specifically, he wants to merge and start a new master race coming from...
Right, so he wants to do what Perpetua failed to do because of her overseers, from outside of the realm of reality.
Yeah.
Which was to create the apex predators.
So
I love
human
the
Martian
art
hand
on Lex's face when he's saying this. When he's like, look, I know, I'm the man of science, and here I am, a believer.
Yeah, here's the thing for me. I don't know if I like this. It feels so un-Lex-like to me.
See, here's the thing, though.
He's embraced full Doom, though.
It's still kind of ultimately as well a little bit selfish. He's the one becoming the apex predator, right? Yeah. It's him that's being the pinnacle of evolution.
Because you were mentioning the art on his face. There's a page where I actually didn't like the way he looked at all, where he's laughing maniacally when he's talking to...
I thought that's why I love that look.
Yeah, he's so far off the deep end now.
Yeah.
He has killed his human self. He is now this apex Lex.
Yeah, but here's my problem, though, is I don't feel we've actually built to him losing his mind like this. Like, I read this and went, oh, he's completely psychotic now.
Oh, no. I was... As soon as he blew up LexCorp Tower and, had Brainiac fashion in his body, that's where
he
I
was like... kind of on the deep end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is I never really felt the build to it before that, but I just never really thought about it too much or let it bother me. But now that we've jumped ahead to this, and he's laughing maniacally and wants to start a new species with Jean.
So, I've been listening to a lot of, I keep wanting to say Monster Quest, that it's not, but it's basically, it's a science-based podcast that looks at monsters and creatures and whatnot. And he's been talking about Lovecraft a lot lately. And what I used to think that Lovecraftian meant was like this unseen evil, right, that you never quite really get to see. But there was always a piece of that I was missing, which also involves the madness of those who have seen it. And I feel like Lex's journey from the start of Snyder here, from post No Justice, has been very Lovecraftian in that way, right, where he was shown this doom. And this is the way that it goes.
Yeah.
And he has driven himself mad trying to achieve this probably impossible task.
And trying to become what the mother of the universe thinks is the best thing. He's like, I can be that.
Matt, if I actually got that story told to me, I might be into it.
But see, I feel that's where we've had it from, him leaving the Justice League and starting the Injustice.
I don't know, well, no, because I feel like all we've really had from him is a lot of monologues about how Doom's the way forward. I don't feel like I've actually gotten a story where I've seen him like go through an arc where he's had a breaking point.
So it wasn't the magic doorknob and him bashing Vandal Savage to death with it. That wasn't his Breaking Bad moment for you.
Yeah, but that was right at the start. That was like issue 1?
The first one.
Yeah, that was the first arc for sure.
I'm buying into it. I like this Lex.
I am too, and I like that even he's aware of the irony. Like that now he's a complete zealot for Perpetua, and he's like, no, this is it's weird, but it still isn't un-Lex, because like I say, it's so selfish of him that he's like, no, he can be better than every other living life form by being this. It's kind of ultimate Lex.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like this Lex. I don't like they've done enough to make me buy that he's turned into this. It feels forced for the sake of the story to me. But whatever. You let yourselves out.
Yeah.
I did not like this issue that much. I mean, I guess that's what I'm boiling up to. I didn't like where the Lex stuff goes. The other stuff's fine. You've got the Justice League and the Antimatter, Quad. Looking for
and
Antimatter.
I like that it's a trap, right? And John has them, encased, with Green Lantern energy.
He's like, we can't fight because that'll distract them.
Yeah. And then just he went through and killed all the weaponers, which that was sad. Because I like those dudes. They got a good look. So
yeah. But he's left them a message, in big, the blood on the floor.
Yep.
Yeah, don't follow me, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that stuff is fine.
Yeah, nice little bit with Shane, Starman, and Starro as well.
Mm-hmm.
Jarro, you mean?
Jarro.
Sorry, yes. Yeah. Him say, Jarro can connect to my mind. I prefer the word conquer.
Yeah.
It just cracked me up.
Yeah, Jarro's pretty great. The stuff with Shane, I'm still not quite because you think about it too much about how he's existing.
I like that though that they're addressing that because the whole thing with him is like, but I shouldn't exist, and he's got like this literal existential crisis.
Mm-hmm. He is existential crisis personified.
Exactly, and Stan was like, no, you're a being of possibility, and it's like, well, possibility is enough sometimes.
Yeah. But no, it drives home that the whole idea of doom versus justice, and it's like this idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy versus like Shane's a possibility, right? He isn't what is going to happen, but it's this uncertainty, and that's what the opposite of doom is, right? Doom's a certain belief that everything's going to end terribly.
Yeah.
And where Shane's like, well, no, I'm here, so something is still up, Yeah.
I think I imagine they would get to a point where he would vanish out of existence if they crossed the point where that future was no longer ever possible.
Right.
Like there was no basically if it gets to a point where there is no chance of a relationship between Kendra and Jean, that's when Shane ceases to exist.
Yeah.
But what this tells us, unless he's vanished, after this Lex thing that we haven't seen, although I don't think so, it tells us that even now, after all this, there's still a chance that those two can be together and have Shane.
Right. And that so the thing that happens with Lex here is this is all a trap from the beginning for Jean. That the moment he stepped foot in there, Lex was gonna assimilate him anyways. And it's even against his will.
Some great art with Jean kind of melting.
Yeah,
it's kind of the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
And we're getting a Jarro issue next time.
Yeah,
but see,
prelude to Justice Doom more.
Yeah, I was gonna complain about like Lex and this whole. He has this plan and he executes it and everything goes off without a hitch, and that's kind of a problem, because he's already he already knows he's won. He's just going through the motions. But what if Jean kind of suspected this, and this is how he brings down Luthor? He's
trying to play him from the inside.
Yeah, because don't forget he was a cop, right? He was a manhunter.
Yeah.
On Mars, so. It seems like it's tragic right now, but I've read enough Tynan and Snyder to know nothing's ever what it seems.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, I was digging this issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked a lot of it. It was, the Apex like stuff though.
I'm just not feeling it. My problem with a lot of this run has been just these big, ridiculous concepts without any actual build to make them feel like they're earned.
This is par for the course, though, because I feel like every arc Pete's had this point.
Yeah.
And me and Connor are like, no, man, we buy into it. It's fine.
Yeah.
And because this happened in in the Aquaman one, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
And John Earth, and then this happened with the Hawk World stuff.
Yep.
This happened in the sixth dimension.
Yep.
Now it's happening here. So I just feel like Pete. I think Pete puts his guards down, and then he gets really into whatever else is going on, and then something like this happens, and he gets pulled right back out.
Yep.
I think Pete maybe willfully overlooks some of the stuff that me and Matt, because me and Matt are insistent that this stuff is there
Yeah.
in the book, and we're going, no, we're getting this. It's translating to us. I don't know if it's just because Pete doesn't like those things, so kind of not consciously, but kind of subconsciously just kind of overlooks those things and goes doesn't think about them too much, because then it can't detract.
This is the problem I've had with Snyder for a long time, though. Is I don't think he builds to his concepts in a way that is satisfying for me. Where I feel like and I know this is a Tynion issue, and Tynion's written the last few issues.
Yeah,
but like, it's this constant thing with him where he just throws out these big concepts, and there might be little teases, there might be things that kind of hint towards it or whatever. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actually dramatically and emotionally building to things so they actually feel that they're earned. I love nothing more than when I'm reading a comic book or I'm watching a TV show, and after like a couple of seasons or a couple of arcs or whatever, I look back, and if you describe what's happened after however many issues, it's like, well, it actually sounds kind of insane when you say it all out loud like that, but it doesn't feel that way when you're reading it, because it feels like the characters are learning things at a pace, and they're accepting things and acting appropriately to things at a pace, where it feels like everything has this weight to it, where it's like, no, by the time you get to the insane thing that happens, 2/3 through the story, it just feels like, yeah, of course we're at that point, because everything's been building, and by the time we get there, it feels natural. I love that in storytelling, and Snyder's storytelling is the complete goddamn opposite of that, where he just fires these ridiculous over-the-top things out at me, and I just kind of like, okay. It's going to sound really harsh, but it does come across to me like almost fan-fiction-y at times, where it's just, no, let's just throw out these big wacky ideas, I'm just going to do things because I had the idea.
Well, and that's where I feel like he's being curbed on that with Tynion, because I feel like Tynion's written half of this arc by now. He has.
Yeah.
So I feel like Tynion's reining in some of those impulses, and we're getting those little, because didn't we see what led him to the doorknob was, that whole potential future where he won, and that's where he dies into Doom, and that was set before.
Yeah, because it was where he went to like whatever year it was, and they all worshipped Lex, and he was like, oh, I like the look of this.
And that was a Tynion issue, right?
Probably. It was a Doom issue, so it would have been, yeah.
Yeah, so I can kind of see where Pete's coming from with the Snyder stuff, but then I feel like Tynion comes through, and I don't know if that's how it's plotted. Maybe it's not plotted in the way, but when I think of the grand scheme of it, right, not the exact order it's coming out in, I see Lex going from point A to point B.
Yeah, where we are now, Lex being at this point doesn't feel surprising to me.
Mm-mm.
Like there's a bit where where you see his face, and you go, "Oh shit, he's really gone down."
Yeah,
and it's like a surprise in that sense. And but I think Jean's kind of got the same reaction there. It's like, "Oh, okay, maybe underestimated Lex a tad here."
Yeah,
but it wasn't like out of nowhere. It wasn't like, "Oh, this is unrealistic that we got to this point." It was just okay, it's a bit further gone than I realized.
Yeah, it doesn't feel earned to me. I feel like this is such a big character shift for Lex and how he is, because he's such a composed dude most of the time. Obviously, Superman gets under his skin and so on, but that changing him this drastically. Okay, if you're going to give me a story where he gets to this point, I'm fascinated by that. Tell me that story. Let me get excited by the breakdown of him and what events trigger it, and slowly show me his demeanor change. Slowly show me how his decision making is deteriorating in a way that kind of gets to this point. And for me, I was reading this issue, and I just I got to the crazy face page, and I'm like, oh, I guess this is Lex now. Okay.
This is my life now.
And obviously some of this is subjective, but for me, I don't feel like this emotionally has been built to a point where it feels right. It feels like Okay, I guess we're just doing this with Lex because this is the story we're doing, and and we all know that in a year's time we're going to have regular Lex back. Like, there's no, this doesn't stick.
This is gonna backfire on him majorly, and I think that's what Shane represents, right? Is that possibility that Lex
The
fails.
fact that Shane still exists means that Lex can still fail.
Right.
That's kind of the whole point of him being there, and the conversation.
I'm not disputing that. I'm disputing that even if he fails, he's lived through this and he's been through this.
Right.
But then he goes back to being regular Lex, and obviously that happens all the time in comic books. And ultimately, you have to just kind of accept that things get reset and status quo's happen.
Yeah.
But because of that, I'm saying it's even more important that when the stories do happen, that you just care about the story on its own merits, because you just kind of have to accept that it's probably going to get wiped to some extent.
Eventually.
Yeah. So for me, when it's not hitting those points, not only am I not really buying into what it's doing, it also feels doubly phony to me because, we're going to forget this was ever a version of Lex in a few years' time, because we're going to be back to traditional businessman Lex kind of thing. So it kind of it compounds it a little bit. But yeah, I've complained enough. I don't know. I don't have any more to say about this.
Yeah.
I'll keep reading. I will say this though: Justice League's not a book I look forward to anymore. It's one that, like, I read because it's the flagship team book, and I read it, and I come in here, and I'll sometimes have some positive things to say. I often have a lot of negative things to say, and I just kind of go with it. But
at least every so often, like every 5 or 6 issues, you get an issue that you really do enjoy.
I do. I enjoyed the first issue of this arc. I recall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But like every so often, you'll get one that you really enjoy, and you're like, "Oh yeah, look, that's why you're still reading it."
Yeah, it's a lot of overall things. I mentioned the art, which I thought was a little bit up and down because of the two artists. It was a little bit inconsistent.
They were not super complimentary artists. No. Both of them individually were perfectly decent.
There was one or two panels of Jean that I thought he looked a bit too skinny, but I mean,
yeah,
that's fair.
But, other than that, what are you rating him, Matt?
I'm gonna give it 7.5.
God.
I'll go with an 8.
Matt was fighting me over that much on a 7.5. God damn it. I will give it 5.5.